Emily was only 4 when she first mentioned Whisper. At first, her parents thought it was cute, just another imaginary friend. But as the weeks turned to months, they began to worry. Emily spoke about Whisper constantly, in hushed tones and with a strange intensity in her eyes. "Whisper doesn't like it when you leave," she'd say, clutching her mother's leg as she tried to go to work. "Whisper says you might not come back." Her father would find her in the middle of the night, standing silently in the dark hallway. "Whisper wanted to watch you sleep," she'd explain, her voice flat and emotionless. They took her to child psychologists, who assured them it was just a phase, an overactive imagination coupled with separation anxiety. Nothing to worry about. But worry they did. Because sometimes in the corner of their eye they'd catch a glimpse of something, a shadow where no shadow should be. A flicker of movement in an empty room. And always the feeling of being watched. One night, Emily's mother woke to find her daughter standing by the bed, eyes wide and unblinking. "Whisper says it's time," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. Time for what her mother asked, fighting back a wave of dread. Emily's face split into a grin far too wide for a child's face. Time to play. That was the night everything changed. The next morning, Emily was gone. The police found no signs of forced entry, no evidence of an intruder. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. For weeks, the search continued. Emily's parents barely slept, haunted by the last image of their daughter's unnatural smile, and always that feeling of being watched. It was a month later when the first package arrived. No return address, no postmark, just a small, brown box left on their doorstep. Inside was a single sheet of paper, covered in childish scrawls. But the words were anything but childish. "Mommy, Daddy, I'm with Whisper now. He says I can come home if you play his game. But you have to follow the rules, break a rule, and I go away forever. Here's the first rule: don't tell anyone about this note. Whisper's always watching, always listening. He'll know if you tell. Love, Emily." They wanted to go to the police, but the fear of losing Emily forever held them back. What if Whisper really was watching? What if this was their only chance to get their daughter back? So they waited, hearts pounding, for the next instruction. It came 3 days later, another unmarked package. This time it contained a small, antique hand mirror. The note read, "Rule 2, look in the mirror at midnight every night. Count backwards from 10. If you see Whisper, don't scream. If you scream, the game is over. Love, Emily." That night, with trembling hands, they followed the instruction. As they counted down, the mirror's surface seemed to ripple and distort. And there, just for a split second, as they reached one, they saw a face that wasn't their own. A face of shadows and teeth and eyes that glowed with malevolent glee. They bit back their screams, tears streaming down their faces. The next day brought another package. And another rule. Rule 3, leave your bedroom door open at night. If you hear footsteps, don't look. If you look, the game is over. Love, Emily. Night after night they lay rigid in their beds, listening to the slow, deliberate footsteps that echoed through their home. The sound of something heavy being dragged. Whispers and giggles that couldn't possibly be human. Each day brought a new rule, each more terrifying than the last. Rule 4, when the lights flicker, close your eyes and count to 10. Don't open them until the flickering stops. If you peek, the game is over. Rule 5, if you see a shadow move when nothing's there, say "Whisper, Whisper." Go away 3 times, no more, no less. If you don't, the game is over. Rule 6, every night at 3:33 a.m., leave a drop of blood on your doorstep. If you forget, the game is over. Their lives became a waking nightmare. They lost weight, lost sleep, lost touch with reality. Friends and family grew concerned, but they dared not speak a word. Whisper was always watching, always listening. Weeks turned to months. Emily's room remained untouched, a shrine to their missing child. But sometimes they'd swear they could hear her laugh echoing from behind the closed door. It was nearing the 1-year mark of Emily's disappearance when the final package arrived. Inside was a key, old, rusted, and stained with something dark. The note read, "Final rule at midnight on the anniversary of my disappearance. Use this key on Emily's bedroom door. Whatever you see inside, whatever you hear, you must enter. You must close the door behind you. You must stay until dawn. If you survive until sunrise, you win the game. Emily comes home. If you don't, Whisper keeps us both, forever. Love, Emily." P.S. Remember, Whisper is always watching, always listening. One wrong move, and it's game over. The night of the anniversary arrived. With shaking hands, they approached Emily's door. The house was silent, but the air felt thick, charged with a palpable malevolence. As the clock struck midnight, they inserted the key. It turned with a sound like screaming metal. They pushed open the door. Emily's room was not as they had left it. The walls were covered in arcane symbols, drawn in what looked horribly like dried blood. Emily's stuffed animals were arranged in a circle in the center of the room, their button eyes gleaming in the darkness. And there, sitting on the bed, was Emily. But it wasn't Emily. Not really. Her skin was pale, almost translucent. Her eyes, once bright blue, were now pitch black, seeming to absorb what little light there was in the room. And her smile was too wide, filled with teeth that were sharp and jagged. "Mommy, Daddy," the thing that was not Emily said, its voice a rasping whisper. "You made it. Whisper will be so pleased." From the shadows behind not Emily, something moved, something large and dark and hungry. "Come in," not Emily giggled, the sound like breaking glass. "It's time to play." They wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at them to flee, to get as far away from this nightmare as possible. But Emily, their real Emily, was somewhere in there. They had to believe that. They had to hope. With a courage born of desperation and love, they stepped into the room. The door slammed shut behind them with a finality that echoed through their souls. And as the thing in the shadows began to unfurl itself, as not Emily's laughter grew louder and more maniacal, they clung to each other and prayed for dawn. For in the game with Whisper, sunrise was their only hope of salvation. If they could make it until then, Emily would come home. If they could make it until then. The hours that followed were a descent into madness. Reality bent and twisted around them. They saw impossible things, heard sounds that no human throat could produce. The walls bled, the floor writhed beneath their feet. And always the feeling of malevolent eyes watching their every move. Not Emily tormented them with glimpses of their real daughter, trapped and screaming in a void beyond comprehension. Whisper, a being of shadow and nightmares, toyed with their sanity, showing them visions of their worst fears made flesh. They endured. They had to. For Emily. As the first rays of dawn began to creep through the window, Whisper's howls of rage shook the very foundations of the house. Not Emily's form began to flicker and distort, like a bad television signal. And then, just as the sun crested the horizon, it was over. The room was normal again. The symbols were gone, the stuffed animals back in their proper places. And there, curled up on the bed, was Emily. Their Emily. She opened her eyes, blue and clear and full of tears. "Mommy? Daddy? You saved me?" They rushed to her, wrapping her in their arms, sobbing with relief and lingering terror. They had won. They had beaten Whisper at his own game. But as they held their daughter, as the nightmare began to fade like mist in the morning sun, Emily whispered something that froze the blood in their veins. "He let me go this time. But Whisper says the game isn't over. It's just beginning." And somewhere, in the shadows of the room, they heard the faintest echo of laughter.